Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Champion Living Podcast, the only podcast crossing the lines between the sport of rodeo and fitness. Today's episode, we have one of our very good friends. I'm not going to say our favorite bull rider because that'll get us in trouble, but Josh Ross, how are you, brother?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
Man, we're so stoked you're here. This episode, real quick, is brought to you by Beastmaster Rodeo Gear. They are running a sale all of December, 20% off, and you can use our discount code Champion Living. We'll sure save you an additional 10%, so 30% off. All December, that's clutch. You wear a lot of and use a lot of Beastmaster.
Yep. We do a lot with Beastmaster. They got the best equipment going. We said do a lot of business with them, and they actually, me and my older brother Joe, we got a online bull riding school. They're selling the school for us too. So check that out while you're shopping.
How important is like your equipment as a bull rider? You know, we're going to talk about working out. Obviously, that's what we do. We've done that for years together. The mental side, definitely going to chat a little bit about that. But the equipment, I think, is not underrated, but it's just not talked about how important it is to have good equipment and how much it matters when actually getting the bull done.
I would say it's definitely underrated. Putting on a bunch of bull riding schools, you wouldn't believe the number of kids that we have show up. I mean, from one point, a safety standpoint, having proper equipment helps keep you safe, let alone it helps you perform better in the arena. And bull ropes alone are probably the most underrated things that, especially for younger kids or people that you like. And so many people or contestants I talk to consider it an expense, not an investment. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, that's cool if you've been using the same rope for 5 years, but for $300, you could get a new rope that, for one, you're not going to be getting hung up nearly as much with because the handle's stiffer, got more life in it. And for two, it's going to help you make the whistle. And I mean, I usually go through 5 to 6 bull ropes a year. Yeah, they cost $350, but because my rope feels good, if you spend $300 on a new bull rope and it helps you make the whistle one more time, it instantly paid for itself.
Yeah, you talk about it as it's an investment. It's not an expense, right? If you are riding with good gear, you're going to win more money. So looking at it like that, 5 ropes in a year, okay, that costs you, I don't know, a couple $1,000s. Well, I hate that, it far outweighs what you just won.
Oh yeah, and even, I'm at the top level, so like everybody's, oh yeah, well, you're winning hundreds of thousands, but even amateur rodeo and in the sport of bull riding right now, like if you make the whistle, they pay you 95% of the time. It's the only event that if you show up and do your job, you're going to place. We're so spoiled as bull riders. If we make the whistle and we don't win money, we're pissed. And it's like all the other events, they do their job all the time and they better stand out, show up, or they're not going to win money. But if you can figure out how to make the whistle, you're going to be making money 90 to 95% of the time you nod your head. And the equipment's a big part of that, from having spurs, same thing like rowels. I see people, they'll have to use the same pair of rowels for 10 years. You look at them and they're not getting a hold of anything. Like a pair of rowels is $15-$20. Like switch them out twice a year. Like it's the little percentages that, over the course of all your equipment and all your preparation, if you can increase everything by 1% pretty quick, you're 10-15% better without even realizing it.
No, I thought you had something.
No, do you ride with a Brazilian or American bull rope?
Brazilian rope.
When did you make that switch? Have you been riding with one of those for a long time?
Nope. I rode an American rope till I was 23 years old. 2018 was when I switched, and I think the bull riding's the same with either rope. Like the basics are the same, but I was a guy that got hung up a lot with my American rope. And I won San Antonio's Extreme Bulls in 2018. I won 30,000, moved to first place in the world. And I came up short making the NFR for 3 years in a row prior to that, primarily because of injuries. I would be 16th, 17th in the world, middle of August, and every year I'd get hurt, primarily from getting hung up. But I was a cowboy. I rode American rope. I was American.
Yeah.
And that year in 2018, it was February, winning the world. Next week, I hang up, break my leg. And I told myself, when I come back, I'm going to learn how to use a Brazilian rope. And it took me, I didn't make the finals that year. It was a little bit of a shift because it does feel a little different, where I said I'd rode American for 16, 17 years. But I told myself, I said, I'm going to stick with it. I'd ran my hand in one once or twice, and it's like, oh, this feels different. I don't need it.
Yeah.
But I made that commitment because I felt like it was something that was going to help me stay healthier. And there's been a direct correlation since I switched of, still bull riding, you're going to get banged up a little bit, but I don't care how good you are at getting hung up and staying on your feet. It's only a matter of time before they get a foot on you and break a leg.
Yeah.
And
why would you hang up more an American than a Brazilian?
just so the way your American rope is, the way your wrap goes, when you come off away from your hand with an American rope, it pins that tail down. And so
Got it.
that was me. Some guys are better than others. Like my older brother, he rode American forever. I think he was just better opening his hand than I was.
Mm-hmm.
There's some guys that don't get hung up. But for me with the American, when I came off away from my hand, I got hung up 95% of the time. And
all I'm hearing is he never quits. His hand just stays closed. Like
that's what I was saying. It's like I got hung up a lot. It's because you try too hard. So
there was a little bit of that. But long story short, switch to the Brazilian. I can hold on to that sucker as long as I want.
And the difference is it pulls from the other side.
Yeah, pulls from the other side. So then when you come off away from your hand,
the tightness is on the front of your hand.
Yeah, it pulls the wrap right out. Go ahead.
No.
That being said, with the Brazilian ropes, the only double-edged sword on it is you can get hung up if you chicken flip into your hand.
Oh.
Granted, when that happens, it's way worse than hanging up with the American. So
it sounds way
you
worse.
Typically get hung up. This is what I'm hearing. You get hung up way less, but if you do get hung up,
you die.
It's an absolute tragedy.
Because it puts you in a very compromised position to where, with the American rope, it's very easy to get on your feet. With the Brazilian rope, most of the time when you're hung up, you're almost in the fetal position with your hand stuck above your head.
Yeah.
That sounds way worse.
Yeah.
Way worse.
Yeah, I'm out.
Coming from the bareback riders who are tied on for dear life.
It's different. They don't have horns.
Chicken flipping was just a way of life for me. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm going to get hung up every time I get chicken flipped, I'd get hung up all the time. So I'm out.
So talk to us a little bit about the bull riding school, the online bull riding school, because dude, I think this is it's the first thing of its kind, really. And it's going to change the game in a huge way. We've already seen that with just some of the athletes we've worked with, them signing up for it and hearing about the results. So kind of just fill us in on how that all works. And
no, it was a really cool idea me and my brother had. You've seen it in a few of the other events. Speed Williams has the team roping videos. Several other people do. Tyson Durfee had started it in the calf roping, and I was actually in his online calf roping school. I'm a calf roper and get the chance to work with the world champion through the course. And I was like, man, we need this for bull riding. And at this point, my older brother was already starting to put on some bull riding schools. But that's the hard part about it. We live in the middle of nowhere in Utah, and it's expensive to get out there. And similar deal, you go to a school and, some 3-4 weeks afterwards, you're starting to forget some of the stuff you learned.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were like, let's figure out how to do this online. And so long story short, we pretty much videoed one of our bull riding schools, shot a bunch of other content, and then we went in and dummied it down and broke everything down. I think there's 95 videos on there. The goal with it is if you've never been on a bull before, you could buy this school, and by the time you go through and master all the videos, you could be at the NFR. It's as beginner simple all the way to the stuff that I'm doing to train for the NFRs in there. Drills, bareback, practice bulls I get on, how to set your equipment up. And we go from something we feel like a lot of the other schools miss is, they only talk about bull riding. We show everything from Holstein calf riders to steer riders. Shoot procedure is a big one that gets missed a lot. You go watch them Holstein calf rope riders or steer riders, the way they got to protect themselves in the chute's a lot different than me on a bull. And we show how the parents can help them. And, we're big, you show up at a rodeo and you got kids that are riding and the steers turning around in the chute and stuff. And we're a big fan of if you're willing to put your kid on that animal and the animal's too small for the chute, you should be willing to get in the chute with your kid and help control that animal. And we show all that in the school. And, like I said, it's the best of its kind. And we've seen the results. It's, we've sold quite a few of them, and we can see how often you log in on it. And that we got several kids that have logged into that school and watched those videos hundreds of times. And they're winning. And then we get a few of the kids that buy it and they log on one time and probably go talk to their buddy about something else and don't use it. And but there's a direct correlation for the people that buy it, use it, do the drills, use it as a resource, as a tool. If they're struggling with something, they get on there, they watch it. And like I said, it's the stuff that I'm doing to be a world champion. And
the craziest part about this whole thing, I love it. Number one, I think it's exactly where we need to be going to help the next generation. The craziest part about this whole thing is the price. Like, to me, like, speak to the price and how that works, because anyway, go for it.
Yeah, it's we actually had upped our price a little bit because we felt like we
That's good.
undervalued
way
it,
too cheap.
but we're selling it for $397 right now. We've actually got an NFR special going. If you use the code NFR 2024, it'll save you 25% through the course of the NFR. But it's, I mean, you're $750 to $1,000 to go to an in-person school, and the in-person school, like I said, after you leave there, you better have a great memory, because
is that annual, or is that
it's one-time payment,
Lifetime.
and you've got that sucker for the rest of your life. And we're updating it as it goes too. Like I said, me and Joe are putting on schools all the time, and as we've got better at teaching people and fixing problems, like I said, we've updated a few of the videos already. But it's once you pay for it, if we update a video, you get that video. And same thing, we take feedback. We've had some people message us like, hey, we feel like you missed this, or I have a question about this. And so it's one time purchase. You got it for life. You've got that login, and we look at it. If you're willing to invest in our school, we're willing to invest in your bull riding career. So if you reach out to us, we're going to do anything we can to help you.
It sounds so familiar to kind of what we do in our training, in the sense that all those guys on the consistency scale, when we look at it and we have a 7, a 30, and a 90-day consistency rate, all those guys that are in the green, and I think they have to be above 70%.
Yeah.
Into that like 60 to 90-day range, those are the guys that are winning, like you, right? Like you are in that 100% consistency all the time. Same thing when you look at the bull riding school, you have these kids that have watched them 100 times and they're winning. That's not a coincidence. There's a lot of people out there that think, oh, I just bought this, that means I'm automatically going to do better. And they don't actually use the resource. You still have to be dedicated and put the time in. Just because you spend the money doesn't mean that you're going to get better, right? So I kind of want to switch to your work ethic and how we've approached this NFR a little bit differently, because we've been dealing with some injury stuff, right? But the whole year's been different for you. And let's go through the whole year, because it's been a totally different year of rodeo for you.
Yeah,
different strategy.
It's been, like I said, I've been working. Doug's been training me now. I think this is the third full year we've been together, and this year's been a lot different. I had some back problems this winter after the final. I think they were starting up last year during NFR training. Was having a lot of low back pain, more than normal, and my low back's bothered me, on and off for 5-6 years, just basic bull rider aches and pains. But whenever I'd warm up, it instantly go away and felt great. Well, even leading up to the NFR, I was warm up and be getting over, and man, my back's still kind of hurt. And didn't think nothing of it. We were so focused on going.
Talking that mic.
So focused on going, rolling in through the finals. But after the finals, I took 2-3 weeks off, kind of went and seen some family. When I came back and started riding in January, like, it was hurting bad. I'd be climbing over the chute, my leg would be going numb, and I think I stayed on 3 bulls out of 25 in January, and finally I was like, okay, like, this isn't normal. And went and found out what was going on. Had a disc that was herniated disc, hitting a nerve, and so had to work through that. We took a 30-day off February, missed some of the big winter rodeos, and really got to work with dialed in with Doug. He adjusted the workout programs and got after it really hard for a month, and went to not being able to get on bulls. Usually my go-to if I'm struggling is get on practice bulls. Well, when you got a herniated disc, that's not necessarily the best answer.
Right.
And so I had to adjust the training there. And it was kind of funny, after we took the 30 days off, said working out, had everything feeling pretty good. Well, my go-to as soon as I got back was we got to buck them. I was getting on 2-3 practice bulls a day. The back was starting to hurt again. And finally my older brother's like, hey man, like, maybe instead of just getting on those practice bulls, you should try doing some of these drills that are on this online school we tell these kids to do all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. So I quit getting on practice bulls and went to doing the drills that we're telling people to do, and did them every day, rode my barrel, stood up on my legs, rode a horse bareback. I was still and then I'd get on 1 to 2 practice bulls a week. and at that point I literally had $0 won in the PRCA, and middle of March rolls around, April, pretty quick, I'm sitting 15th in the world. I'm like, holy cow, this stuff actually works.
This is neat.
And then rolling on from there, we kind of had it dialed in, was riding good, body was feeling good, made it all the way through the summer. Well, middle of August, we talked about the hang up with the Brazilian. I had one of those bad hang ups. I got chicken flicked, hung upside down, drug around there for 30, 40 seconds, tore my rotator cuff pretty good. Shoulder was very unstable. I think I tried riding 5 or 6 more times and made the whistle on 3 or 4 of them. But even then, when I'd make the whistle and I'd get off, if that arm lifted up at all, that shoulder was trying to dislocate on me. And so at this point, I was sitting number 1 in the world at this point, but whether I went the rest of the year and tried to tough it out or didn't go, I was going to be in a great position going to the NFR. And so I knew that it was going to come down to who rode best in Vegas was who's going to be the world champion. So at that point, I made the decision to quit going and talked to Doug, got hooked up with another physical therapist that Doug works with, and got the workout program dialed in. And, so we got after it for 2.5 months, got the shoulder feeling good, and was able to got feeling so good I was able to end up getting on about 14 head of practice bulls the end of November, right before I came here. But
how many pro rodeos did you go to this year?
I think I was 82.
82 pro rodeos. Yep. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you rodeoed pretty hard in the spring, but then weren't you PBR teams all summer?
Yeah,
you were, it was crazy to me that you took February off. Still, when PBR team started, was like number 1 in the world for that short amount of rodeos that you went to, and then came back to some pro rodeos maybe after teams or right before you.
Yeah, it was the goal this year, knowing that I was going to do teams, was after Calgary. The team started the first weekend or over Calgary, and so I told my team, I said, "Hey, I really want to go to Calgary, but after Calgary, I'll come to the next 11 events." And through the course of my goal was to have $150,000 lead after Calgary. Didn't have that. I think I was sitting number 1 in the world at that point, but had just kind of took the lead in the world. And then, that's part of having a game plan and sticking to it. I love riding bulls, and I feel like I'm tougher than everybody else and work harder than everybody else so I can get on more bulls than everybody else. Well, the goal was after, at that point, I was supposed to slow down on the pro rodeos, focus on teams. Well, the body felt great, so I'm like, why do I need to slow down? And so I was going to the team events Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I did slow down a little bit. Last year, I was going to rodeos every day of the week. This year, I slowed down to where I was, 3 days at the team events, then I was entering 2 or 3 rodeos a week still, and kind of was making sure to be a little more aware of the stock I drawed and not go and get on stuff that was stupid, but probably still pushed myself a little bit too hard, hence the shoulder tearing out and stuff. But once the shoulder got tore, I think I went to 2 team events after that, and shoulder dislocated at one of them. And JB Mooney was my coach, which you never think JB Mooney would tell you not to get on, but JB, Brandon Bates, the general manager, coach, they kind of pulled me aside and they're like, "Hey, you're in a good spot to win this gold buckle. We need you on this team, but winning that gold buckle is more important right now. So you quit coming to these and get healthy."
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool. I wouldn't ever expect that.
Oh, yeah.
From JB, but looking back, he's been through a lot with his own body. And I think he probably doesn't regret anything, but he wants to help preserve the other guys.
Like I said, it meant a lot coming from him, hearing his opinion, huge. And they more or less didn't let me get on the last day of that team event and told me to quit coming. Well, Pendleton's Extreme Bulls was the next day, and I was sitting in one of my goals has always been to win the Extreme Bulls tour. I've been like second and third the last 2 years before, just came up short. So I was like, I told them, well, I'm going to quit going, but I got to go try Pendleton. Like, I need to finish this off. And I got on the first day at Pendleton, rode my first bull. Second bull, I landed on the shoulder, hurt it pretty good. And it was so funny. I was trying to decide whether I should get on the next day or not, because I still had the lead, but I was in a position that if Clayton Sellers rode good the next day, he could pass me. And I woke up the next morning from a text from JB, and it said, take care of yourself. Big money in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And more or less he was saying, don't get
Don't
hurt
get
now
yeah.
doing something stupid.
Yeah.
Like Vegas is the goal. And so I made the decision that I quit going after that. Didn't get on the next day, worked out, ended up winning the Extreme Bulls year end still. So that was pretty cool. But it was just funny coming from, not saying it was funny coming from JB, but it was cool to see that.
It's hilarious coming from JB.
Yeah.
We can call it what it is.
Yeah. Like,
it also shows that like the support for you is so much more than just what they see in the value for their franchise, right? A lot of other sports teams will push that limit. They'll inject you with whatever cortisone, make you feel better for a minute, but the long-term effects are so much worse sometimes. So yeah, just see that take on it is pretty cool.
No, it meant a lot for me coming from, like I said, the general manager and the coach, that they were like, they knew what my goals were, and I told them that going in there, and they sacrificed a little bit for their team to help me accomplish something I've been trying to do for 10 plus years. And
that's cool, dude. Super cool. Brandon Bates is a good guy, even if he never calls me back. What else has changed in your life?
Oh, you got a new baby girl. We're 3.5 months old. That's I guess kind of when things are meant to be, they're meant to be. I was I planned my schedule. That was part of the appeal of teams and slowing down on the rodeos come August, was when Mavie was due to be born. And I'd had it set up we actually had a induction set for a Monday when I knew I was going to be there. But I was so worried that the 2 weekends before that I was in Brooklyn, New York, and Florida. So I was like, man, just begging my wife, like, just don't go into labor while I'm on the other side of the country. And long story short, I tore my shoulder I was in Brooklyn, tore my shoulder in Woodstown, Piles Grove on a Tuesday, flew home, wife goes into labor like 2 days later on a Saturday, which if shoulder wouldn't have been hurt, I would have been in Austin at the PBR event. So it was just kind of meant to be the way it worked out, that I got to be there for all of it. And so it's been pretty cool. I've always wanted to be a dad, and I had a great dad growing up. And I think that's one of the greatest callings in life, is to be a good father. And so it's something I've really looked forwards to, and happy I'm finally at that stage where we got a little girl. And
so cool, man.
If you have one piece of advice to give Doug here, who's expecting his first in January, one piece of advice, what would it be?
Good luck. The first night was when we were like, holy cow, we're doing this.
This is real.
Isn't it crazy? They like turn you loose with the baby.
They turn you loose.
Good luck.
They don't give you a lot of advice either. Yeah.
I'm not. It's gonna be good. It's all gonna be good.
I will say, my wife's a champ. She's made it really easy on me. So hopefully Allison takes care of you as good as
she will. She will.
That's been a common theme this week on all of our guests. I think almost all of our guests at some point in time, their significant other has been brought up. We had like Reese, who got to rodeo with his wife, like Chase, his wife, handles so many things. Stetson Jorgensen, his wife, feeds out here for him so he can go to the gym.
Feeds him.
Feeds him too, but also feeds stock so he can go to the gym. But having it having somebody on your team, right? Your significant other being really bought into how has that like shown up for you, I guess, your relationship with your wife and your rodeo career, and what does that look like?
Oh, it's the most important thing. People talk about it already, just who you surround yourself with. And sometimes I feel like your significant other is something that gets overlooked. And that was something, while we were dating, not that we had to work through it, but like she knew how important my goals were. And we're very much a team. Like, I consider her goals just as important as mine, and we do everything we can to support each other. And I've seen lots of instances where, other rodeo guys or that person you're dating and got in your corner is the hugest key to your success. And it can be good or it can be bad. And my dad preached that to us, all of us kids as growing up, how important it was to have somebody like that that's supportive, because being a rodeo cowboy is a hard job, and it's even harder if the person at home isn't supporting you. And like I said, there's a lot of late nights on the road and a lot of time apart. And so that was something I looked for in a partner from the get-go, was somebody that was supportive. And, when I wasn't riding good, was still in my corner. And That's something Erica's been naturally did very well from that was one of the things that I guess I found appealing about her was felt like I rode better when I was with her and still when I was away from her. Like we kind of had a long distance relationship from the first time we met. She was from Quebec, Canada. We were both at college in Oklahoma, separate colleges. And so, the first 2-3 years we dated, like we spent more time apart than together. So we learned how to have a great relationship, long distance. And then what made it cool was the more time we spent together, the more we even liked each other. Yeah. And that's a big part too. Sometimes it's easy to get along when you never see each other, but then when you start spending more time together, it's supposed to get better, not worse.
Yeah. My wife kicks me out every couple of weeks. She's like, I need you to go away for a while.
Well, that's what I always say. You can't miss me if I never leave.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
What's the plan for the future with Mavie and Erica? Do you guys plan to rodeo as a family at all, or thought about that?
We've thought about it. We don't know. That would obviously be I want to be there as much for my kids as we can as I can growing up. And I'm dang sure I'm only 29 right now. So I dang sure got another 6-7 years into me, training with you guys. We might make it till 45. I don't know.
Sky's the limit.
But, we haven't made an exact plan yet. We're just kind of still getting used to having the baby. My wife's a breakaway roper, and so she's already been back in the practice pen. And so it'll be interesting to see. I think she's planning on at least trying to make the circuit finals next year. Wilderness circuit's got a lot of money in it, and she rodeoed pretty hard last year and didn't win as much as she would have liked. And so her goal this coming year, I think, is to try to crack the top 50, just going to the circuit rodeos and the stuff closer to the house. And like I said, it's going to be a learning experience with the baby, but we're just kind of playing it by ear. But at some point, I do think that'd be awesome. Get the RV, load the wife and kids up, and hit the road.
Cool. I know Richie did that, with Paige and Forrest, and he's like, it was the best thing ever, man.
Yep.
And also, I think for Forrest, it's so good because he can do anything. Like literally, they rode in 15 hours from Montana to here, and they said he didn't even cry one time. Richie's like, he handled it better than I did.
Well, that was when we drove down here. Erica did a poll. Who's going to have to, she did an Instagram post, who's going to have to stop more, Josh or Mavie? And then she kept track. And sure enough, Josh had to stop 7 times. Mavie stopped 3.
Oh, that's so funny, dude. I'm the same because I have to pee every 5 seconds.
That's me.
So.
It's my trainer told me I need to stay hydrated. So, you drink a gallon of water in a 7-hour trip, you're going to have to stop and use the restroom a couple times.
We got to put some parameters on the hydration. Chugging water. Dude, let's get into the finals for this year, how it's been going. I want to talk about some of the young guys that are there. There's some really, really talented young bull riders that are here this year, and they're showing out. Cooper James is on a roll, and it's cool to watch him do what he's doing.
No, it's been great. I knew it was going to be fun coming in here. I'd kind of a different group in the locker room than we've had the last couple of years. Several of the guys that have always been here, Sage, Stetson, Kai, Creek, injuries, switched associations, aren't in the locker room this year. So it's and then we've got some of the old veterans that are back. Tyler Bingham, Dustin Bouquet, that hadn't been here for a couple of years, and it's been cool to see. And it's always fun and hard for the rookies. I think we got 5 rookies this year, and 5 or 4. We got Jeter, Wasey Shawla, Cooper James,
Trosclair,
Jace Trosclair, yep. And TJ Gray, 5 first-time NFR qualifiers, and then 3 of them are actually pure rookies that have first time in the PRCA full card members. And it's like I said, it's always hard because there's always 2 or 3 of them that are going to show out, and there's going to be 1 or 2 that struggle a little bit, and you never know which is going to be which. But it's been Cooper James has been showing out. He's freaking been dominating. And it's cool. I know Cooper's from Utah. He came last fall. He actually came to the house, got on a few practice bulls, and kind of was, hate to say it, but of that group of high school kids that senior year, Cooper was probably maybe the most underrated, but probably the 4th best rider of the kids in his class. You had Cade Madsen, Trace Red, Cooper Jacobs, we had some very talented kids, and Cooper James rode good, but it's been cool to see the work he's put in and surrounding him. He got in with Clayton Sellers, Lefty Holman. He surrounded himself with champions, and it's paid off. Like, he's dominated all year, rode good all year, and rolled here into Vegas. And like said, he's been riding as good or better than anybody here.
He's always been one that's never been scared to put in the work. I had the opportunity to start training him when he was like maybe 16. And so we got to work through a lot of the high school rodeo days and the amateur rodeo days together. And then once he bought his rookie card, he was able to get in with Clayton and Lefty and those guys. And they're not scared to work hard. And so like, he's always put in the work, and it just goes to show he might not have been the most talented guy in his senior class, but like, the work always pays off at some point in time.
Yeah. You can outwork talent. It don't matter how talented you are, but if you don't work hard, and that's Cooper. Like, he gets after it, and it was cool too. Like, I'm really close with Clayton Sellers. We rodeoed together several years, and I've always got on a bunch of practice bulls, and he's never came to the house. We live a long ways away, and he's got wife, family, and stuff. But he's always been very inquisitive about it, and it was really cool seeing him this year. He went and found practice bulls. All year long he was watching the bulls that were good, and he bought 2 or 3 practice bulls, and they had some people bring them in. And so Clayton and Cooper, they've been getting on just as many practice bulls as I normally do, and you see it in their riding. They are both riding outstanding here in Vegas, and it pays off.
Nothing replaces the live reps of getting on bulls, right? Like, you have to do all the things. You have to work out. You have to train your mind. You have to get on bulls. But I think the most important part is you're looking for very specific things for your practice bulls. We're not just going and getting 22 or 23 pointers and loading them every day, right? You're getting on cows someday.
Oh, yeah.
So it's run us through how that works and what you're looking for, because I think a lot of, especially young guys, go to a practice pin, and that is what they're getting on, is 22 or 23 pointers, and they have no business doing that. It's not going to make them any better. It's usually going to hold them back, if not injure them and really hold them back. So what are you guys looking for?
It's if you're getting on, and my percentage is probably higher because I've gotten pretty good at riding bulls by this point, but you need to be making the whistle 80% of the time in the practice pen. And it's not necessarily embarrassing or it's very frowned upon, I guess, in the industry to show up to the practice pen and get on the easy bull. And some people don't have the luxury of being in an area where they can get on the proper stock all the time. But if you're not making the whistle, you're not getting better. And there's the days you've got to push yourself. And especially for the younger guys, like, technique is king. Like, at the end of the day, it don't matter. You can be in the best shape in the world and have the best mental game, but if you don't know how to ride bulls, you're not going to be able to ride bulls. That's the priority, is getting on bulls, getting them repetitions under your belt. And then once you know how to ride bulls, you start adding in the physicality of working out, staying healthy, and the mental game. It completes your pyramid, and you're going to go to the top. But
talking that mic.
But a little close now. But it comes from when you go and get on them. If you're not making the whistle, there's a little bit of, you need to have better technique, but the only way you're going to get a better technique is by making the whistle. When you're getting on those lower level bulls, it gives you the ability to think a little bit while you're riding, of like, hey, I've been practicing this on the barrel. I need to, you miss a jump, you don't get piled up, and then the next jump, now we drive to the front and we get up on our knees. Whereas if you're getting on those 22 pointers, you might be able to ride and make the whistle 1 out of 10. Those other ones, if you have a thought, you're piled up in the dirt. And then there's the little bit too, like, there is a time when you've got to push yourself. And that's how I practice. I get on, I'll get on 5 or 6 good timing jump kickers or spinners. And like, I've got to the point now, like, I can slow it down on a 20 pointer. My confidence is, feel like I need to slow it down. I can go get on, be 80 points and be thinking and riding. But I've got 1 or 2 we bought a bull this year that was at the Eliminator pin in the NFR last year. I didn't get on him every day, but what I did, I only got to get on 14 bulls this year. And I got everything worked out, dialed in. And the day I left before the NFR, I ran that bucker in and strapped him. But that's the push yourself a little bit. You got to push yourself to grow. But if you're only pushing yourself and you're never making the whistle, you're just creating bad muscle memory, bad habits, and you start to expect to fall off and protect yourself.
That is so important, not even just for rodeo, but for any kind of sport in general. the proper reps are what pay off. And especially in rodeo, we like to skip way past where we should be, right? And I think it's a halfway an ego thing, halfway we don't know better when we're starting. But in today's world where we are now, the resources are much more abundant than they were when we were starting, right? They have your school, they have training that we can do. There's all kinds of practice pins that you can go to, and it's so important to get those right reps, even if you feel like you're.
It's not glorious. It's not cool. You're not 90 points.
Yeah.
But it's like, and especially for the younger kids, it's cool. So I don't know about all the other states, but in Utah High School Rodeo, they now have a JV division in the bull riding.
Oh, that's cool.
You can't qualify for nationals, but they give a year, Utah State JV champion, and they're lower level bulls. And we get a lot of kids that are too prideful to enter the JV bull riding. They're not making the whistle in the actual high school, but they're like, oh no, I don't want to enter the JV. And we preach to them, it's like, this is your last chance to compete, go to competition, and have a JV level. Once you turn 18, that don't happen no more. Yeah. If you enter, you're getting on buckers. And it's like, that's the goal is, winning a high school championship's great, lotta, but the goal is to be a world champion. The goal is to be at the NFR. If you're in this sport, that should be where you're trying to go. So take the younger years, the high school years, to swallow your pride, enter the JV your freshman, sophomore year. Then by the time you're, once you're riding 100% of the JV bulls, now we push ourselves our junior, senior year and step it up. And because you have 2 years of repetition of riding the lower level bulls and winning, you've trained yourself, you've trained your mind, you have the expectation of, hey, I'm going to make the whistle. Now I'm ready to step up. Now when you turn 18, you're going to be ready to go to the PRCA rodeos. But if you spend 4 years getting piled up by the high school bulls, maybe your senior year you start riding a couple, but like you're outmatched every time you're nodding your head.
Not to mention the damage that's accumulated over when you're 14, 15, 16 years old and you're breaking bones and you're getting wrecked out over and over and over again in those developmental years. That comes back to haunt you when you're your age.
And it physically haunts you and mentally haunts you.
Absolutely.
Because that at the end of the day that you learn to it's hurt so bad so many times you don't even know how to ride anymore because when you get in that compromised position, it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, here it comes.
Let it have me. I'm
done. Let him have me. This is it. Good thing I'm a cowboy.
That was my motto for riding. Let him have me. Every time I know him. Let me ask you this. So the before I ever knew you or your brother and had spent any time with you, the rumor was like that maybe Joe leading up to the NFR got on like a bull like every day for 45 days or something like that. That was the rumor that you heard. And it was the first time I'd ever heard about somebody like leading up to it. That's crazy. You could take a chance at getting hurt. But is that like, what was the actual story there? Number one,
real story there. Denny Flynn had told Joe, told him that. He said, first year Denny made the NFR. He said, I worked out. I went and played basketball. He said, by the third, fourth round, I was so sore I couldn't even walk. And Danny had an old man tell him, you're riding bulls. You're not playing basketball. The only way to train for bull riding is getting on bulls. So that next year, Denny went and bought him 2 Angus bulls. He got on them jump kickers every day for 30 days, went in and won the average. And so that was what he told Joe. So that first year, Joe made the NFR. We had a Coriani bull and a big Charlet bull, and they were just jump kickers. And we hauled them. He was at college at the time. We hauled him down there to college. And the first 5-6 practices, there was 20 people out there thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And then when they realized that they were just jump kickers, the last 20 times it was me and Joe and Dallin Duncan. There was 3 of us out there helping Joe, but because like I said, it's not glorious, but it's the basics. He was riding those jump kickers. He was training, and he did that every year. He played with it a little bit the year. He rode great that year. The next year, I think the 1 year he got on maybe 55 or 60 bulls. He was getting on 3-4 bulls a day. Probably overdid it a little bit. He was almost a little.
He's a maniac.
Little desensitized when he got to the finals, and but that was what was cool with Joe.
I didn't even thought of that as being an option. As being like desensitized to getting on. Like
that's true.
Like had a hard time like firing himself.
Yeah. Like it was just one like he had worked so like it was
just another bull at
Yeah.
that point in time. It's just a
and he still and that was his. I think he still rode 4 out of 10 that year and won 90,000. But like,
still, and back then that would have been equivalent to like 180,000.
Yeah. And so that was the first year I made the NFR. I was like, I know the secret. I'm going to ride these jump kickers. I'm going to go win the NFR. Long story short, I bucked off all 10. Problem was I was probably riding better than I'd ever rode before from riding the jump kickers, but I hadn't been on anything that was buckier.
Mm-hmm.
First round of my first NFR, I drew a bull that I'd got on 3 months earlier, and this sucker had just annihilated me. Like, didn't even feel like I had a chance of riding him. I was riding this bull so easy. It went from him annihilating me to me doing the perfect repetitions that it surprised me. 6.5, 7 seconds. I was just like,
whoa,
holy cow,
I'm
this is
doing it.
so easy. Right foot hits me in the butt, and I'm laying in the
I
dirt.
love it
And then
when that happens.
my mental game was a little weaker then, and it's one like when you get out here in Vegas, when you've got to be on top of the mental game because it's very easy for one bad thing to start spiraling. And I spiraled a little that first year and rode one bull. The one bull I rode ran off, took the re-ride. That was in the 9th round. But that was where I learned, everybody trains a little differently. And also they don't bring easy bulls to the NFR. And
No,
nothing's a given. It don't matter how much work you do at the house. It doesn't mean you're going to, you still have to show up in Vegas and make it happen. And it was one, I'd seen my brother have success. So I thought, hey, if I do the work, I'm going to have success. I knew that I was about 45 days straight of getting on practice bulls. But my takeaway from that was I didn't get on anything that bucked. So the next year, I kind of switched the training method to where I got on something I knew I was going to make the whistle on 80% of the time. And then once a week, I got on something that was a little ranker. And long story short, come back in the next year and I win the average, ride 7 out of 10.
What was your first year in the PRCA?
My rookie year was 2015.
2015.
Yep.
What year did you make your first NFR?
2019.
2019.
Yep.
Like one thing that we love about you and your story and your work ethic, or at least I do personally, is that you get better as you get older. You become wiser. You start investing more and more in yourself and in your health and your mental game. Like maybe speak a little bit to actually learning from touching the stove. I feel like a lot of guys touch the stove and they're like, oh, that's hot, shouldn't do that again. And then like 6 months later, they touch the stove again, but you actually, it would appear that you learn from your quote unquote failures in the past, and it just propels you forward.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's, you never fail. You just learn. Is the way I look at it. And try to not make the same mistakes twice. And I feel like that's been one of my strengths as a bull rider is a lot of people don't want to look and see what their weaknesses are. Ooh. And that was what I did when I wasn't making the NFR. I was like, what do I need to do to get better? And long story short, the first takeaway was I was getting hurt all the time, hence hanging up with the American rope. I did a lot of the trying to hang on to the bulls, and that was what would happen was I'd be in the top 15 in the world. July, August would hit a couple people. I mean, I was still right where you wanted to be, but I would start panicking because people were passing me. Instead of just staying in my lane, riding my bulls, finishing the season, I tried so hard, I'd hang off the side, doing stupid stuff. Pretty quick, you get hurt and hanging up. So that was where the Brazilian rope came in. I was like, if I can learn to use this Brazilian rope, and that was my goal for 2019. I said, I know if I can stay healthy all year, I'll make the NFR. Long story short, I got knocked out the last weekend and had to miss the last 2 rodeos. But at that point, I had the NFR made, and I stayed healthy all year, hence the Brazilian rope. Let's roll to Vegas. Buck off 0 for 10. Seen it happen before to other guys. None of them ever came back to the NFR. Or if they did, it didn't go good for him. I think Dustin Bowen made it twice, and I think he bucked off all 10 bulls both times he came. And so it's the greatest fear as a bull rider.
Yeah.
And I feel like a little bit of karma for me because I remember watching those NFRs those years that I made it and them guys bucking off and just think they're wasting their opportunity. What are they doing? And so when it happened to me, it was a real eye opener that like it can happen to anybody for one. But my big takeaway was like, this isn't going to define me. Like I know I ride bulls better than this. And long story short too, I looked in and it's like, okay, what do I need to do better? And at the end of the day, like I didn't ride NFR bulls very good. I made the NFR being 80 to 85 points. I maybe had rode one. I had one or two rank rides, but in general, those short round bulls and those 21 and a half plus pointers were the bulls that I wasn't riding. So at that point, first time I bought my PBR stuff, started going to a few more PBRs just so I had the opportunity to. That's the cool part about the PBR is most of the time you are going to get on 21 and a half pointers.
Yep.
And started putting myself in those situations a little more. I got hurt in 2020 right off the bat. I left Vegas, head hanging a little low, but I was pretty fired up. Went and stayed on at the Chase Hawks, started the year really strong. Win the round at Fort Worth, I was 89 and a half, get my gut stomped on. Had to take my spleen out. My pancreas was leaking. It was about a month in the hospital. It was kind of a bad deal, but came back from that. Coincidentally, that was when COVID hit. So that was the only good part about COVID is I only missed one rodeo when I think Cave Creek or whichever one had the rodeo there in April. I wasn't cleared yet, but I got cleared right as the rodeo started. And I don't think they cut me open all the way up my stomach. And I felt good, but I don't think my core was as strong as it could have been, or just from the trauma and stuff, because I went and I got on probably 15 practice bulls before I took off rodeoing, but I stayed on 3 bulls in the month of June and July. I was sitting like 98th in the world going into Sykeston right there second week in August. And I really didn't do nothing different. Like my wife chewed my butt the day before. I finally got a little sour. Like I keep the best attitude. And I finally was, bull was a hunk of junk. I should have turned out. And finally Erica's like, you're out there living your dream. You need to you either come home or you get a better attitude. And you look floppy. You're just flopping around out there. I'm like, gosh dang it. Okay. I don't know what her calling me floppy did, but I rolled into Sykeston the next day, was 88 points. And then from Sykeston to the end of the season, I rode 60% of my bulls, moved from 98th in the world. So I ended up 17th that year. I had to.
Wow. That's awesome.
And so that was a big confidence booster for, up until that point in my career, I'd never rode 60% of my bulls. Yeah. Like I'd have a weekend where I might ride 2 out of 3, but I was like, I just went 2 months riding at Sage Kimsey's level. Like I can do this that was maintainable. 60% became my new expectation. And then there was that point too, when it was like, I was so pissed from not making the NFR in 2020. Like if they had a bull ride and I entered it, I'd seen a video. I hadn't entered an amateur rodeo in like 5 years because last one I'd entered, I got hung up, broke my leg. So I was like, I'm a professional. I'm not going to no amateur rodeo. Well, I see this video of Jose. He was at Stockyards Thursday night. It was the Stockyards weekly rodeo, freaking spurring bulls for 90 points. And I was like, there's a guy that taking every opportunity he can to get on bulls and practice winning. So I therefore, after I missed that NFR in 2020, if they had a bull ride and I entered it and practiced it's easy to show up when you're at a PRCA rodeo because you feel like that's your place to be. It's a lot harder to show up when you're some backyard bull riding and you got to get on a bucker and you're a different group of guys. Everybody's coming up. Oh, you went to the NFR. You're going to kick our butt, and like boosting your ego and stuff. And so I really use that as a chance to work on my mental game of show up and dominate where practice winning. Like, I don't care where you're at, show up and win. I went to pitching in the Pines, won that. I went and got on
that's
it.
That's a rank little bull ride.
Oh, it is.
Pitching in the Pines. It is super rank.
I went to the bull cell. The Guthrie has their bull cell where they pay the riders $15 to get on or whatever. I said I went to Guthrie, got on bulls, and it was kind of embarrassing. I got piled up by 4 bulls down there in Guthrie, but rolled over to Odessa the next day and won that. And that was the start of 2021. But the course of that, I feel like it built my mental game and rolled into 2021 and, kind of been overnight success since then. But it's, being able to find what those weaknesses are and kind of to circle back to the practice bulls, like that's something I look for in my practice bulls is I don't get on those nice spinners in the gate. I get on the out of line, switch directions every time, a lot of drop and kick. And what's we tell them, if you can ride something that's moving forwards, dominating the front end, when they fall out of there and spin, it's easy to get to the front.
I want to change subject just a little bit. I was thinking about Wasey. Shala, and he has been on fire all year and is having a lot of difficulty this NFR. And I was just wondering, like, what your advice for a rookie that you've been through it, like you've been through the same thing he is on path to potentially, have the same not good outcome. But I know that it's in there. Like he can definitely ride bulls, right? And last night he was about that close for making it to happen. But I feel like it was the same thing. He was like, I'm there. I finally did it, and then whack, bucked off at 7-8 or something.
Yeah.
Like, what do you say to a younger vet or a rookie like that?
I haven't really talked to him yet. Like I'm close with Wasey, but not close enough to like the worst deal was when you bucked off all of them, the people that were giving you advice that had no business giving you advice. And so I've kind of, I think tonight's tonight. I think he rides one for sure. He's got a good matchup, but the advice I will give him after, if for some odd reason it don't go good tonight, like we buck off 4 bulls in a row all year long and
all
don't even
time.
blink an eye at it. Even one bull. But you hit the ground here in Vegas, and it all of a sudden you make it mean more than it does.
Well, it feels like all of those buck offs in one.
Like it's. I mean, I remember that year. Like I couldn't even look my family in the eye. Like they all came all the way out here to watch me, and I just felt like I was letting everybody down, and you just make everything mean way more than it really does. And that's Wasey's a little bull riding sucker, and similar deal. He's had a few bulls that didn't really fit his style. I really wouldn't say he's just straight up the not last night, the night before was the only night I feel like the nerves maybe got, having bucked off 3 in a row was getting in his head a little bit to where he had that bull rode and bull switched directions, bucked him off at 7.9 seconds. But the other bulls have just been bulls that bucked hard and he's just not got him rode. But if you can do the stuff that got you here, you buck off, and same deal. I guarantee if you look at his stats, he bucked off 5 bulls in a row multiple times during the year and probably showed up on the 6th bull and was 90 points. But that's hard to do in Vegas because all of a sudden you start making it mean more than it does. Like
trying too hard,
the money, the family, and similar deal. He's got 75. You're on my fantasy team. You're letting me down.
Well, no one ever talks about that. The extra added pressure that's not necessarily meant to be added, but you can't help it. Like your family's out there, they spent the money, they've come out here. Like
people that don't come watch you all year show up in Vegas to watch you.
Feel the pressure from it, and when you don't perform, up to your standards, it just stings even more, and you feel like everyone's thinking a certain way, which they surely are not. But you can't help it. So I can only imagine what he's going through, and
it takes even to this point, 5th year here, like. I have to be very crisp on that, my mental game and the thoughts I let in my head, because I ride 2, buck off 3 or buck off the 3rd bull. And like my first instinct is, and it was the TV pin. It was supposed to be the 88, 90 pointers that are easy to ride. Like it's, if you come in here knowing that an eliminator or a rank pinner might get you, but there should be them pins that's where the mental part is like, don't let it mean more than it does. Like sometimes stuff happens, but we got to show up tomorrow and be ready to ride.
That's something you learn with experience.
Right? Yep. And like I said, it's hard, but it similar deal. Learn from my mistakes in the past, and I didn't let it mean more than it did. Like bull jumped ahead. If I get in that situation again, I'll do better. But there's nothing I can do. Like it ain't going to affect how I'm going to show up tomorrow. That doesn't mean I'm a bad bull rider. It just means that bull got lucky, and we better be ready for the next one.
Yeah, dude. And in a sport where a 40% success rate makes you like top 2% elite in the world, you're gonna buck off. It's gonna happen. Just hopefully not all 10 in a row down a stage like this, but that could happen too. And I did give Wasey some advice this morning, nothing about bull riding, but I texted him and I said, dude, I think you should do some mobility and get your body moving and just reset. And I said, that's just my advice. You probably are not going to respond to me, but like, if that's what I would do.
Well, and it was funny. So I bucked off all 10, 19. I wasn't working with you guys at the time. We started working together summer of 21. And that when I made the finals the second time, you'd had the stuff scheduled. I didn't do them. I bucked off the first 2 bulls. So technically it bucked off 12 in a row. And borderline was freaking out a little bit. I'm like, it's happening again. Well, sure enough, I wake up the morning in the 3rd round, like, all right, let's get to work. Did the workout, and then we rode freaking 7 out of the last 8 bulls.
Yep.
And direct correlation, get up, get that blood pumping. And it's, that's what got me here. Let's keep doing it while we're here.
Exactly.
That right there, what you just said, that's what got me here. Let me keep doing it. We level up and we get to a new stage. And so often we see it with so many guys. Oh, well, I'm at a more advanced stage now, so I need to change things. I don't
have to do that.
Or anymore. I don't have to do that anymore because I already made it. It's like, no, you got to dance with the one that brought you. Like that's how we see it in the summertime with a lot of rodeo athletes that are rodeoing hard. Like, man, you got to continue to do A, B, and C, no matter what the stage is. That's awesome to hear.
It's so important, man. Fired up for the draw tonight?
Oh yeah. I think I got the best bull in the pen. Jeter Lawrence got on him the first night. He bucked Jeter off 7 seconds, probably to be 90. And
yes, sir.
I actually got on the bull at San Angelo. He bucked me off, but he's kind of up underneath himself a little bit. Wants to get your feet. He's one though. You sit up and bow that chest out and let him do it underneath you. He's going to feel really good and be a pile of points.
Man, that's so awesome. We're fired up for you, buddy. We're excited. Thank you for coming to hang out with us today. Did you guys have any questions for Josh at all? Anybody? Cool. Just want to open up to you guys. Until next time, which is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., we have my sister-in-law, Paige Champion, will be on. She is a Olympian.
She doesn't have a lot of great advice, but she's fine. I talk to her once a week. I
just
don't know
for
why.
Fun, not for advice. Yeah. More to help her feel better. But we'll be on with her. She was a pairs figure skater for Canada and is one of the top mental performance coaches in the rodeo world and out in the business world. So we will catch y'all then.